People are taking over more of their own work.
Yes.
And the historical context had been about the way things happened with the East India Company. And then you had mentioned that this was both hopeful and dangerous. And I wondered why that contrast was there. What are the dangers involved in people taking this over, if in fact the government isn't doing it?
You know, the best thing is reform. If something has gone wrong, then it is put right. And there is the famous example of the French Revolution, where everything went wrong. And at the same time in England, there was continuous reform and adjustment, and there was no violence, there was no disturbance, no disruption. Another good example is the East India Company itself. Initially, there was a lot of plundering, mismanagement, and then there was gradual reform. Everything became smooth, stable, and for 150 years. Now, on the other hand, the fall of the Mughal Empire and its disintegration meant 50 years of war and anarchy. Now, if the government department started reforming themselves, as you saw in the Kachi Abadis, if you saw the same thing in the KTA, in the planning department, in health, in education, we would have a very stable situation. On the other hand, if this does not happen, then you know the people began to design alternate systems. It was not only the East India Company, every village became autonomous, which also meant anarchy. When every village began to take care of its own security, they built fortifications, there was no revenue to be collected. The Rohelas, they grabbed Rohelkhand. The Marathas, they began to make raids all over India. The Sikhs started a campaign for capturing Delhi. So this is what I mean, that ultimately the people will survive. The Mughal Empire will fall, but India will survive. India will not disappear from the map. Did not. Similarly, Pakistan will not disappear. The Pakistani people will not disappear. What they will experience is, in a state of anarchy, all sorts of struggles, conflicts, and ultimately something will emerge, but it would be a Caesarean operation.
Are we in danger of supporting that kind of anarchy by supporting, in fact, villages to take on more and more, or mohallas or people to take on more and more of their own responsibility?
You saw the first sign of it already. You have seen how the MQM, you know, if you had been living in Karachi, especially if you have been living in Orangi, they took over, they sort of liberated Orangi. Trenches were dug, and they established morchas with guns. They thought they have liberated. It was a very stupid, sort of senseless. Same thing had happened in MRD. Whole areas had been liberated. They also had the delusion that they can defy the Pakistani army. So this is the danger of violence, of anarchy, instead of a smooth change, stability. But this is inevitable. A whole people cannot die quietly. If the Mughal Empire, if the Mughal Emperor cannot manage things, then the Sikhs will manage things, then the Marathas will manage things, the Rohillas will manage things. The East India Company, and the East India Company being the best of them, ultimately overpowered everybody and again established the empire. And by the way, I've become so fond of using similes. Tasneem Siddiqui is like Ali Vardi Khan. Inside the Mughal Empire also there were attempts at regeneration. The Nizam Khan went to Hyderabad and he could not do anything in Delhi, so he went to Hyderabad and established order there. Ali Vardi Khan established order in Bengal. Shuja-ud-Dawla established order. So he is the Shuja-ud-Dawla, the Ali Vardi Khan and Nizam Khan of the Mughal Empire.
Okay, sir, if you will permit me, then let me compare this session. Because I think what each one of us is very keen is to have your views on really the role of the RSPs.
Yes.
How these should proceed. And if I recapitulate what I have understood, what you have been saying since day before yesterday, is that, of course, since administrative reforms are not possible, and we have to wait for somebody who comes and then is really committed to undertaking such reforms. The situation as it is demands that, because of the tremendous willingness of the people to do things for themselves, what they need is a support organization. A support organization which can provide them technical assistance, social guidance, and where needed, a line of credit.
Right.
Now, all the rural support programs, as you very well know, of course, they have been following the conceptual package which in the 80s we learned from you. And of course the refinements which are coming in, we try to incorporate those. But the current situation as it is, there are certain issues which you have raised. There are a couple of things which I think would need clarification, because the kind of statements that you have made that might sort of give the impression that you mean one thing which may not really be what you are really trying to convey. One is really, I don't think that there is any confusion as far as the importance of the support organization. Now, how that support organization should be, what its structure should be, that of course is something which we can discuss. But the point that you have made is that the support organization can only function if there is an organization of people. An organization of people depends on trying to discover the activists from the community and trying to nurture him. This support organization should try to nurture him so that he, the sine qua non for an organization is really not an organization but a really democratic activist who is prepared to carry that organization forward.
Yes.
Now, this is one issue where I think